It's so interesting that when I read your story, read your background, you were so entrepreneurial growing up, but you made the decision to start your career in big tech. I'm curious why you decided to move to big tech instead of creating something of your own early on.
Maybe before and after aren't the best words for me to describe it. And it's really been kind of this windy journey. And so I had attempted to start other businesses before that and really didn't have the right operational muscle. I have, pretty good product instincts, and technically, I was pretty strong, but, I was that guy out there building the product, hunting for the customer. And so I had the whole kind of pyramid inverted and, wasn't validating the market properly, wasn't sorting out the go-to-market. Like I was doing everything backwards, right? And I was like, well, I can write a great piece of software that ... no one wanted. And so what I found was the folks that I respected started to find their way into some of these larger companies, and I would get opportunities, and eventually it worked out where kind of that ikigai, something that was quite interesting to me that I could add value to, that I got energized by. And we can get into this maybe later in the conversation. Not only was that great from a skill stacking standpoint, but it actually connected me and helped me learn how to think about money. And so I don't believe those two are decoupled. And so I always bring this into the story, in that it wasn't just like, oh, I got this job, I learned this skill, I started the business. It was kind of this expansionary thing that was, it happened very organically. I didn't have a master plan. I got very fortunate to have a great set of coaches, mentors, and sponsors. And really the only thing I can take credit for was, I kept showing up.
There's a lot to unpack there, but I think first and foremost, so many people think the money is in the early stage startups, and they pass over the fact that if you're slow and steady for big tech, number one, you're going to be taking dollars off the table in years where, the startups, there's no liquidity. So you think about the time value of money, there's an opportunity there to, start building a financial fortress. I also really enjoyed your specificity around looking for inflection points, because there are different times, even right now, you think about AI. AI is a very interesting inflection point to start inserting yourself into companies where in those specific companies, non-AI companies, they don't know the answer, and they're looking for people that can have conviction, iterate quickly in a direction, and roll up some things with clarity. I think there's a lot of interesting opportunity in big tech today. So you and I were talking earlier about the fact that we get into big tech and it is easy to get comfortable, to maybe lose some vision, to, be sleeping in our silk sheets, as they say. But then you start getting a desire to move on and really understand, well, what's next for you? At what point did you start realizing my time, and maybe it isn't a clarity of my time in big tech is done, but there's something else out there for me and I want to graduate into what's next? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, since I look at this not as a fork in the road that never changes and there are more seasons, I look at it, what's my skill stack, what's my interest level, and where are these opportunities? And this is where I have a technical background, why I really embrace sales and finance, and that's been kind of the thing for me even today. That's kind of the reason I do the job that I do, because I love the opportunity to be able to move through all three of those. But whatever someone who's listening might see as their unique skill stack, I think you have to take that into consideration. So, if someone has something hyper unique, it's like, don't dismiss that as like, oh, I have this weird skill or this strange experience, or, I speak this language that maybe isn't considered like a global business language. Like, don't discount any of that stuff. Like, go sit in a room and figure out, how do you kind of pull this together? And, just like you might do with a product where you're doing problem story fit, you're trying to do kind of your founder story fit, or your, kind of employee story fit, to kind of figure out how all these pieces work together so you can inspire people and they understand like, oh, this is what Christopher is amazing at. And when you are making yourself that one of one, there's just so many, opportunities in general, but people don't know how to value you. And so that to me is the magic, right? I like to tell folks, when we talk about kind of working, I know at least in the US, a lot of Western countries, like how much do you make is like one of these weird taboo things that's either, it's like, it's embarrassing to ask, or, it's kind of crude, like, we don't talk about those types of things. But just from a practicality standpoint, somebody who makes $150,000 at a company, someone who makes $950,000, like they are not at the same financial velocity. But we might all say like, oh, they're six-figure earners, right? Like it's like this Boolean, like one bucket of people. And so this idea that there are so many ways for you to take your skill set and go and leverage it, I think is important. But also, once you start turning that skill into dollars, just having clarity on kind of where you're at on your journey, I think is so important, because no offense to some of the folks who are early in career who maybe they've made their first $1 million. Like when I made my first $1 million, it was like amazing. It was transformative, right? And I thought I had it all figured out. And I'm like, okay, there are so many seasons to this. And so those folks are like on TikTok and YouTube telling folks like, I found the secret. And it's like, it's like one of those things, if you've ever been to a fancy hotel where, you think you're at the top floor and then you find out the penthouse actually has its own elevator. There's always another door. And so we're all leveling up in this game. And yeah, just be really cognizant to the current season. And I'm sure, many of the principles that you teach on just kind of basic financial wellness is also part of this, this journey.